My goodness, is it good to be back. Thanks for coming with us, Dr. James, Dr. Mike. It's the weekly webinar. We're here to answer your YouTube questions. Mike, I got to tell you, one of my dogs took a shit about 1 foot to the right of where I'm sitting right now, and the smell has not gone away. It smells like ass right here.
God, those goddamn dogs.
Mm-hmm. I know. Like, I brought them home from the vet, and immediately they ran into the office and took a huge shit. Like a banana-sized shit. And
both of them, or just one of them?
Just, I think the one. Hammerfest.
That's the girl, right?
Mm-hmm. She takes like
sister,
some of the biggest continuous dog logs. Yeah.
Aww.
Exactly, sister. And her fucking logs, man, are like human-sized logs. I'm like, how does a continuous poo come out of this little dog?
They eat a lot, huh?
Yeah, those little fucking hungry hippos. Little chongalina.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shall we get to it? Yeah, I'm ready. I'm starving to death, so forgive me in advance. I'm going to have some chili, but I will mute myself so you don't have to listen to me slop through like a piggy.
Okay. All right. So, Throniful starts us off. For pull-ups, my set-to-set performance decrease is way higher than for other exercises. If I do something like 4 sets at 2 RIR, it tends to go something like 8-6-4-2. Why is this, and is there something I can do about it? Could be for a bunch of reasons. One of the reasons is it could be some of the muscles involved. Some of the limiting muscles are really fast twitch. Could be that they're not very well vascularized. Could be a bunch of other stuff. The easiest resolution to this is twofold. So, one is not a resolution at all, but it's a don't worry about it. If your reps are over 5, then they're about as hypertrophic set per set as anything else. But there you run into the problem of 8-6-4-2, the 4, and especially the 2, gee whiz, it's just not that many reps. So the easiest resolution for that is to rest longer, because you might be, just an extreme example, but maybe you're used to doing bicep curls and then you've never done squats before. You usually rest a minute between exercises, and then you do a set of squats for the first time ever. You rest a minute, you get 1/10 of the reps, and in the next set you don't get any reps. So there's no reason to assume that the rest time is going to be the same for all the exercises. If you go according to our rest time 4-factor model, which we have all over YouTube, just type in rest times as Ratel, it'll come up. How long should I rest between sets? It'll come up. If you're following that and you're dipping under 5 reps, you're technically violating one of them. So what you want to do is rest longer. So instead of resting maybe a minute, 30 seconds, maybe like you do now, try to rest for 2 minutes or even 3 minutes between sets of pull-ups, and you will almost always have much higher reps and problem solved. James?
Yeah, definitely. I think the rest times is the first and foremost issue, like Dr. Mike said. What I would do, so I'm kind of looking at what you said about like the 8-6-4-2. Once you get to like 6 or 5, then what I would consider doing is moving into either assisted pull-ups and or pull-downs. And one thing, that you'll find is that sometimes you might hit a limit like this with your pulling movements, and this is something I've experienced, where you're just like, you're struggling to get above 5 reps, even if you're doing assisted. And at that point, your lats might not actually be toasted yet. It might be a combination of things. Like for me, like my anthropometry is not great for pull-ups. Let's put it that way. And so then you might switch over to something like some type of lat isolation exercise, like a straight arm pull or a cable, straight arm pull or something like that, to get whatever lat volume you still need. Because it might just be one of those things where if you're built like me or, really lanky, that you just suck at that particular movement and you're probably not going to do much better. So consider moving into the assisted after you get below 5 or 6 reps. And then if you're still kind of hitting a wall there, I would move into like an isolation type movement for the lats, and then maybe hit a couple sets of that and move on.
Yeah, good thinking. At some point, even expanding the rest times might just be like, well, you're just not strong enough to do that many sets of pull-ups without the reps falling off, and that's that.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Next up is Mantas Biliputis.
Oh, Montes.
Always with the good questions. Montes always gets uploaded like crazy. He's the man. He says, and this, he's just down there below.
He's got recognizable name now too.
Zenith, he
Got it.
says,
Yep.
when massing mainly for strength, working with 3 to 5 reps, how much lower should the calorie surplus be compared to gaining weight with maximum hypertrophy in mind? Well, I think the answer there is you shouldn't. Number one answer is you should be gaining weight only with maximum hypertrophy in mind. Because then you maximize how much hypertrophy you're getting. And if you don't have a whole lot of muscle to build, then you just don't do hypertrophy training for as long. And then you switch to an isocaloric environment once you're at the weight you want to be at, and productively lift in an isocaloric environment or eucaloric environment, whatever, where you're just at maintenance. So when you're gaining, when you're massing for strength, it's called a hypertrophy phase in strength periodization, and it's sets of roughly 5 to 10. And then you do the same surplus. You would usually do the same surplus range, maybe a little bit lower than for hypertrophy range. It's not optimizing hypertrophy, it's just optimizing it for strength. So maybe on the low end of the hypertrophy gaining range. But I would not recommend gaining mass, mostly working with sets of 3 to 5, because that doesn't optimize mass gaining, and it doesn't, it's just, who the hell is yelling back there, James?
Mel and the dogs.
Okay, can you tell Mel that they can hear
Sorry.
really loud? Tell her, shut up. Shut up.
I might have changed my microphone settings.
You do sound.
That's drawing the line. That's drawing the line for me. You don't touch the microphone.
Yep.
I'll do that later. But yes.
So in any case, you want to do, when you're massing, you train for hypertrophy, which is, if for strength purposes, that's roughly 5 to 10. Mass it at the low end of the normal range. So if you're massing and training with sets of 3 to 5, it's highly suboptimal. We have to tell you that. If you're going to do it, then you gain considerably more slowly. It might be the case that working with sets of 3 to 5 with the optimum volume for strength might be at your MEV for hypertrophy, or maybe even below, in which case you might not gain a whole lot of muscle if you're advanced. It's training with sets of 3 to 5, no matter what your rate of gains is. Also, you'll notice the following, that if we say that the lower your reps scheme is and the fewer sets you have, and if you're strong, you do fewer sets, then the lower your rate of gains, there's a hypothetical point at which your rate of gains is so tiny that why are you massing in a strength phase? You could be having a greater gains if you just massed in the right repetition range. So just do one and then the other. That's the best answer, I think. James?
Yeah, I totally agree with Mike here. And, Mike did a very eloquent way of saying, like, both of those are kind of bad ideas, right? And for reasons that Mike already mentioned. But so here's kind of the deal, for strength athletes, whether you fancy yourself that or not. But if you're in a strength power sport, once you hit 5 reps and lower, you should mainly be in an isocaloric state for a variety of reasons. One, as Mike already said, it's probably not the best way to do massing, period, regardless of what your endeavors are. But 2, you're going to actually start to run into problems if you're making significant body composition changes when you're training for what is roughly maximal strength, because your body position, your kinematics, your technique will start adjusting as your body mass also. And this goes in both directions. You shouldn't be trying to lose weight. You shouldn't be trying to gain weight, because you're going to start to see significant changes in your body composition, which is going to alter your technique. And you don't want any technique changes when you're training for maximal strength. You want that to be lockstep, ready to go. And it's just a matter of training and having high levels of preparedness, not dealing with incremental changes in your body comp. So there are times, and I've said this before, where you might have somebody who your periodization plan worked out, that they did a cut, and maybe they actually undershot their competition or their ideal body weight for whatever it is that they had coming up a little bit. And so you might do something like, I've loosely called gaintaining, which is like planning on being isocaloric, but loosely. And if they gain a little bit of weight along the way, so long as it didn't take them out of their optimal range, that's fine. Might help take the edge off a little bit. But for the most part, it would be like a planned maintenance phase in terms of diet. And if they had some, if they were underweight by a lot, then they could have some extra snacks here or there. But it wouldn't be like, okay, here's the planned rate of gain. It's just, we're planning on isocaloric. And if you want to have, like a donut or something every now and again, it's not a big deal. That's kind of how I would approach it.
Yep, super. Next up, a little bit of a scroll, is Mohammed Nader.
Got it.
Mohammed says, ooh, interesting one. I think you're not scrolled to the. There you go. Boom. Okay.
I think so.
So it was just delayed. You're good, James. This might be a controversial question, but I would like to hear your thoughts on the matter. Do you guys think that there should be a separate Olympics that doesn't do any drug testing? Not that they encourage it, but it's not against the rules. The idea is to see how far can advanced medicine help with sport performance. Same idea with UFC. While they don't do any testing, we already know that people passing drug tests and cheating on their sport. So why not just put them against people who are willing to take what they take and to make more of a level playing field? Of course, amateurs and people under a certain age, e.g. 24, have to compete in the tested category until they can make the decision to switch. Regarding the health risk, I think doctors can more carefully monitor athletes' health and intervene more quickly if it stopped being such a taboo topic. Also, if this was to apply, by what margin do you think records are going to be broken? Thank you for the informative content. Great question. So my answer is actually very simple.
Yes.
It's not. I suppose it could be somewhat of a cop out, but I can caveat it adequately. I think I speak for James and I both to say that we're fundamentally like pro-liberty people, call us classic liberals or libertarians or anarcho-minimalists or whatever. And we think that if someone is an adult and can sign a contract and they're not hurting uncontracted parties, they should be allowed to do essentially whatever the hell they want. So if James Hoffman opens up the steroid federation of just do as many drugs until you die, and there's not even a sport, you just shoot drugs, then if people sign up and people want to watch and buy tickets and see, get online pay-per-view passes, then I think that's totally fine. And I think that's about as far as morality should go. At that point, you're not cheating at sport because everyone's doing the same modalities. And I think they would have, if that sort of thing was popular, it'd have a real cleansing effect on actual tested competition. So I'll tell you this, because there's drug-tested bodybuilding and untested bodybuilding, the drug-tested bodybuilding sees relatively low use of steroids. Because the guys that want to use and go all out, they just go in the regular version. And because the regular version with the one with the drugs, the untested IFBB NPC, because that one makes you more money anyway and it gives you more notoriety. Very few people cheat in natural bodybuilding because like cheating for what? So you can call yourself WNIBFA pro and nobody can give a flying fuck. Like natural bodybuilding is cool as shit, but it's not exactly filling the seats. So, but it is a much purer sport than, for example, what you would call natural bodybuilding in the 80s or something, when everybody was juicing, and when they tried to drug test the sport in the early 90s, it failed terribly. Because, juxtapose this with something like track and field. And look at track and field, there's only a tested version at the Olympic level of international track and field, and the use rates are unbelievable. Almost everyone at the top is using because the incentives are insane and there's no alternative. So if you want to see drug-tested sport, one of the best ways to do that is to have an option for people who don't want to be tested. And the marketplace should decide whether or not that is a good idea. This is not, would I like to see it? Yeah, I don't know. Sure, or not. I don't give a shit. Cool. I'm not really interested in human performance esoterically like that. I think sport is entertaining. I'm interested in a personal level. I want to get jacked. I want to help you guys get jacked. It's cool to see like the ultimate person get jacked, and that's fine. I don't think it's like a moral social mission of like, we should as a society see how far humans are capable of doing. I don't give it. Humans are nothing. Machines are capable of more than us, and we'll be soon at everything. Let's push the machines. Sports are an entertainment. Literally, it's jokes. Sports are a joke. It's a hobby. And it's fun, and it's great, and it's entertaining, but it's entertainment. It's like saying you can't have a drug-using sport federation is like telling strippers they can't have, like, implants. It's like the whole thing is for entertainment. Like, why not? So to me, that there's an obvious yes. James, anything you want to throw in there? Can you imagine if you just radically disagreed with me? You were like, absolutely not.
Yeah, no. So like Mike said, we largely share the same opinion, and I'm going to come at it maybe from two slightly different angles. But so I agree with everything that Dr. Mike said, first and foremost. So like I have no issues with people who want to use drugs outside of the legalities, and that's an ethics issue, not a moral issue. Here's the other thing, right? It sounds great, and everybody thinks about like, oh, well, if you had guys who were juiced up, it'd be great to watch them compete. But the problem is it doesn't end there, right? So there's a liability issue where you're going to have guys who are PCP'd and methed out who step into a cage and effectively can't die for the next 5 minutes, and then they die afterwards, right? Or they kill the other guy in the ring because they don't have enough self-control. So you can say like, oh, they sign a waiver, but those waivers only go so far when you have people who are literally dying in your sport or whatever competition that you're hosting. So from a promotional standpoint, that is a very difficult thing to pull off. So people only think about anabolic steroids, but the testing includes all sorts of stuff, right? And so the last thing I want to see is, juice head versus juice head plus PCP plus meth. That doesn't interest me at all. That's just like a disaster waiting to happen, right? I don't mind that if you have two guys who are using performance enhancing drugs, right? But again, the testing doesn't just end there. That's not necessarily the only reason why that is in place. So there's that. Definitely some liability issues for the people participating as well as the people promoting whatever events they are. And then as Mike kind of said in one of the comments, there's a market issue where it's like, are you really going to try and split up your viewing or, subscribing audience now into potentially halves? Like, it doesn't seem to make sense from a promotional standpoint where, yeah, you might get some people who want to see like the most juiced out people competing ever, but that's also going to be a detractor for the Nachi crowd, who's, I don't know, I would argue roughly there's probably like 50% of people are just kind of want to watch whatever sport is going on. And then maybe the 25% on the tails would like to see only natural versus like supernatural. So it's kind of like, why would you want to diminish your audience from getting the biggest audience that you could? So I think there's a promotional limitation there. And something like the UFC where it's like, yeah, we all like MMA, we all want to watch that. But now it's like, okay, well, there's UFC 1 and UFC 2. Why would you do that when, just having one UFC event might be pulling in millions of pay-per-view buys and everyone's happy? So there's some serious limitations there. So I understand the question, and I think it's a good question. I think the practical limitations are overwhelming, and that's the problem.
Yeah. So it comes down to this, like James and I think it should be completely legal in the market. Now, to the extent that corporations are willing to step up to the plate and actually supply that demand, and to the extent that demand exists, because we can have wishes to see it hypothetically, but it's very different than demand. Like I would be interested in seeing a milkshake that's like 3 gallons, but like if McDonald's put that out, like how many people would really buy that? Like maybe it's just not worth remachining the factories for that. So, I think that's a decent answer. If anyone has a follow up, they can ask us on the next webinar. All right. On a hilarious segue, our next question asker is just down a little bit. It's Fake Natty.
Oh, Fake Natty.
Yep.
We told him last time to have I'm assuming it's a he. We told that person last time to have a better question because their name was so good.
Yeah. YouTube people will be assumed he's on demographics alone until proven otherwise. All right. So Fake Natty says, hi, docs. I have a question regarding 2 approaches to back off sets. Lowering of no reps at the same weight. I think okay. Lowering reps at the same weight versus lowering the weight and keeping the reps the same or even increasing them. What is the difference in the effects they produce? The former is standard in Dr. Israel's training, while the latter among powerlifters following RTS-style programming. That naturally inclines me to think that reps drop more suited to hypertrophy training, while low drop is more suited to max strength. That's actually backwards. We'll get to that in a second.
I was going to say it's the opposite.
However, there are so many other factors that may influence why one is used over the other. Intensity of no reps / sets being probably the main one. After doing your staple set of 1 rep, or a staple set of like 1 set at RP8, you obviously can't really drop reps in the next set. Oh, I see. Oh, so 1 rep at RP8, you can't drop reps for sure. Yes, this is the same question I asked last week, but you skipped it despite acknowledging my awesomeness of nickname. Well, there you go. So this time you got a ton of upvotes. Congratulations.
Wait, so like with the name Fake Natty, does that mean that he is admitting to be a performance enhancing user?
I think it's just a YouTube guy, so it's by no means
throw himself under the bus.
It's by no means clear he's a real person or lifts weights. I think like the
I know, but
yeah,
Fake Natty sounds like drug user to me. Like
it does, but it's all a meme, bro. It's all 8chan or whatever. So JK, LOL. It's all.
I still think it's funny.
Lulls all the way down. It's a great name. All right, Fake Natty, lullaby. Here's your answer. There is a good constraint you brought up, and here it is. When you are modulating the amount of stimulus you're getting, sometimes when you're doing very low repetition sets, lowering the weight and getting the same number of sets means you're lowering the weight by very little. it's still in the strength range, so it's still effective. And you need the volume and the practice of doing those number of repetitions. So you're doing sets of 5. You might still want to do sets of 5, even though you're too tired to do your top sets. So dropping the weight by a little bit can still let you do sets of 5. Okay? That's a perfectly fine reason to drop the load and not the reps. Because dropping the reps would you get you sets of 4 and 3, and then it's fine, but it gets a little arbitrary, and so on and so forth. Maybe it doesn't give you enough technical practice, and so on and so forth. However, here are the real constraints how to decide which one to drop. It is fine to drop reps as long as they don't leave your rep range. And in hypertrophy training, anything north of 5 generally is fine. So letting reps drop is fine. Dropping weight is okay, but what we like to do at RP is kind of an algorithmic approach to training where you have one rule set that makes sense and it results in the simplest possible modifications. So our rule is drop load only when you exit rep range. The thing is, a lot of people are like, all right, I want sets of 10, only 10. Like, okay, well, to get every single thing at 10, you'll have to drop the load more or less every single set if you're large and strong. But like by how much? It's a guessing game every single set because you're like, oh man, that 10 wasn't hard enough, and then it was an 11. So then the reps are random anyway, so what the fuck are you doing?
And just for anyone who that went over your head, that Mike's talking about, if you're holding an RIR constant, you would have to change virtually every set.
Yeah. So fundamentally, it's kind of like, okay, you're not really sure what's going on here. So it's easier to just let the reps drop until and unless they exit your range, and then you robustly bump up the load or bump down the load to get well back into your rep range for the rest of your sets. And again, let that repetitions get degraded over time. That's a way to do it, not the way, and it works really well. If you want to modulate load every single time, you totally can, but then you have to watch out for another thing. When you are doing less than 5 reps per set, okay, then you know for sure it's not enough load. You know for sure it's not hypertrophic enough, okay? But if you do enough drop sets, if you really get into down sets, if you get enough down sets and you're always cutting load, you can arbitrarily still be doing what look like hypertrophic sets and reps, but the load can be so low, you're way outside of the 1RM zone that is a good idea to do. You should have just left the gym. So what we do at RP a lot of times is we drop the load only a little bit ever, and then when the reps really decay, we just know we're done because probably we're putting out such low efforts that it's junk volume. But you can do a lot of junk volume and have no idea you're doing it if you just drop the load all the time. You're like, yeah, I was doing tricep extensions 120 pounds for sets of 10. Now I'm doing sets of 10 with 60. And it's like, what percent of your 1RM is that? 25? Right? Like, who knows? And then you may very well be out of the range, but you're like, well, I'm still doing sets of 10. Like, yeah, but with a way lighter load. If you do like one drop and then it goes to sets of 5, you're for sure anything lower than that is just not going to be stimulative, and you're never going to risk the chance of training too light. So people ask the question like, okay, I'm on my 6th exercise and it's biceps. Should I do a down set? No, because what the fuck percent of your 1RM is that? It's going to be so tiny that you're just moving around. All of your faster twitch fibers are just off because they're that fatigued. They're barely doing anything, and then you're not gaining any muscle. So real quick, that being said, can you do the load drops? You absolutely can. And for strength, what I like to think is this. If you give me a choice, pure, like no other conditions, no caveats. If I'm training for strength and you give me the choice of within sets of 3 to 6, as I fatigue, should I let the reps fall or should I let the load fall? My answer is going to be reps. Why? Because the primary driver of strength is load. And if you do a couple of sets of 4 and then a couple of sets of 3 at 200 pounds, you get a lot of stimulus at 200 pounds, which makes you really strong. If you get lots of sets of 4 and then more sets of 4 at 200 and then 180 pounds, you did a lot of sets of 4, which is good and may have its own merits. But some of them were at 180, which doesn't make you as strong as 200 does. So because we want to maximize the load factor, I would say drop the reps all the way to the lowest end of the range before you consider dropping the load. There are other ways to do it that are fine, but I would like to see that question answered by folks who promulgate those other ways.
Yeah, that was a really good answer. Just a couple other things that are worth maybe thinking about, and they're more practical limitations, is when you start having to add a lot of down sets, you have to start wondering kind of how much of this particular exercise do I really have left in this session? Am I starting to go over that kind of 4 to 5, very rough but still useful limit on this particular movement? Or is it time that maybe I switch to another good SFR choice movement for this muscle group? Because for whatever reason, I'm just tanking so bad, my reps are going down, which could be a good thing. It could mean that like it really fucked you up, and each subsequent set you're really fatigued from the first maybe 1 or 2 sets, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But at the same time, you don't want to be sitting there doing 10 sets of squats necessarily. It might be good to move on to something else like a leg press, knee extension, pick your poison, whatever it is. Same thing goes for any other muscle group. And with the strength stuff, I think more than the bodybuilding, the strength training stuff, you can get into that junk volume zone really, really easy where you're used to doing hypertrophy training. So you're like, oh, I should be doing like 10 sets of chest, right? But really, maybe you only needed to do 4 sets of bench, and that's it for the day to get that really good strength stimulus. So it's an easy trap to fall into where you're like, I don't really feel like I did that much. I only did 4 sets. I'm used to doing like 10 sets per session. Maybe I'll add some down sets. Well, those down sets aren't really doing anything that those first sets didn't already do. So it's really just adding a lot of volume and therefore fatigue and not giving you any payout. So I think that's an easier trap to fall into where, at least in hypertrophy, you can always add sets, and as long as it's within your boundaries of recovery ability, you're probably going to get more out of it. But those are just some other things to think about.
Ooh. All right. Ein Brown.
Let's see. Ein Brown, King of the North. It's a good name. Good mood. Where the fuck's Ein Brown?
Down there a little bit.
Was it above or down there a little bit? All right. Let's see.
I think yours were some of them.
Ein makes me think of the dog from Bebop.
It should just.
See, I had that dumb extension.
Okay, which doesn't work. I should be up higher if the extension is working because it's got 13 upvotes.
Is it EIN? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't control F while I'm screen sharing. Hold on. I'm unsharing. Now all I'm getting is protein. Oh, there we go. Found it. All right. Ein Brown.
Not to be confused with Ayn Rand. Wow.
Ooh. Oh, Mike, sorry. Real quick. Did you see the trailer for the new Batman movie?
Yes.
I have mixed feelings about it. How do you feel about it?
Mixed.
Yeah. Because there's only so many. They always do the origin story, right? Like, let's just have some cool Batman movies at this point. Why do we got to keep going starting over?
Batman came from, and also they always try to make it so grandiose, and sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's just like,
yeah. Anyway, I'll see it because I'm a chump and I love Batman, but
yeah. Ein Brown says, "Help me with that all-important Adonis Belt question. Is it bro science that the transverse abdominis enhances the appearance of an Adonis Belt? And the following question, if it does, how would you preferentially train it anyway? Stomach vacuums don't get harder, and more generally, I'm unsure how to progressively overload the transverse abdominis because in my eyes, at least, the transverse abdominis doesn't control a joint in the traditional sense." So a couple easy answers here. First of all, I'm not really sure if the transverse abdominis contributes to the Adonis Belt or the Apollo Belt, whatever the fuck you call it. It's basically, I call it the fuck muscle, which is like, the guy with the big, like, muscle love handles in the front, like the little V thing, and you're like, oh my God, I wish he could fuck me. Like, come on, we've all felt that before. Anyway, but he's usually like an Italian or Euro, like, model guy, and he looks at you only with the following facial expression. And you're like,
you're like, is he looking at me? And he's like, do you have a cigarette? And you're like, damn it.
He just wants cigarettes. That's all he
just wants. Cigarettes. That's all he wants.
Yeah, Brad Pitt in Fight Club probably had the Adonis thing going on. So in any case, the easiest way to get that jacked is twofold. One, train your abs because your rectus abdominis literally compose that fucking part of the muscle anyway. So transverse abdominis can contribute, but it's deep to that, so you may never see it, though it might make it pop out more. And if you want to learn how to train the transverse abdominis muscles, it's easy. proper bracing under fucking heavy deadlifts and squats and rows and all this other stuff. That's it. Like if you can do a yoke walk with 1,000 pounds, you got big ass transverse abdominis muscle because it's like a belt literally on you at all the time. So that's it.
Yeah, I have no clue, but what I can say is I don't think that pursuit is a good use of your time.
Just get leaner.
Yeah, just get, like Mike said, if you want to work on your abdominal muscles, that's an easy one, quick payout. Get better at posing and just get leaner and more jacked over time. I don't think anyone's ever lost a bodybuilding competition because they didn't train their transverse abdominis enough, outside of just not training enough, period.
For sure.
Right. So, yeah.
All right. Charles Austin. He's got 5 upvotes, so I don't know where he is with you there, James.
Oh, jeez. Where are you, Charles? Oh, I found it.
Dude, you know what? You got to just turn off that extension so then we're on the same page and we can easily find it because I'll tell you where to scroll.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll do that for next time.
Cool. Charles Austin says, what is your guys' go-to method of balancing out muscle asymmetries? I've tried more unilateral movements, but for my triceps, I just don't get a good mind-muscle connection on my right side. I find my left arm will have a good pump and be sore in a good way after a triceps workout, but not my right. So actually, just recorded a video on the exact question that will be going on RP YouTube sometime. The thing is, we're recording videos like crazy, so we're like half a year ahead of schedule, which is sweet. So enjoy the many videos that will come out every week for forever. But there is a bringing up lagging muscle groups or body parts video already on RP that you can look, and some of that in there. Fundamentally, it's an easy answer. You take your bilateral training, like all of the both arm training you do, and you go to probably maintenance volume. And I know that sucks, but you're trying to get one arm to catch up, so the other one has to be at maintenance. And then the only tricep training you only do for your weaker arm, and you do only unilateral work. And yeah, it's not going to feel that great because unilateral work fucking sucks, which is why we do almost none of it. Any kind of pump you're getting with a cable pushdown is going to be a ball sack of a pump. Or rather, the pump you're going to get is going to be much more terrible if it's like one arm cable, whatever. It's unstable. It's bullshit. But that's what you got to do. So you got to get creative and train that one arm stuff more while putting everything on the other tricep arm at maintenance volume. So bilateral movements at maintenance volume. Go from MEV to MRV intelligently, logically, with tracking on the other tricep. And when that other tricep gets bigger, not the same size, bigger than the usually big one, then you slowly start to reintegrate normal training back in and don't do any extra work for that weak tricep. Then, because you got a little bit ahead of schedule and because the tricep that was on MV is now really sensitized for growth and probably genetically just more prone to growth, which is why it's always getting bigger anyway, for whatever leverage reasons or fiber type reasons or neurological reasons, then it'll catch up at least a little bit, and then you'll have a period of several months or years where they're roughly the same size. And then, and this is all going to be in the video, that other dominant tricep, just for normal training, is probably just going to leave your other tricep behind eventually anyway. So you might want to do another one of these 3 mesocycle sort of prioritization phases at some point. Again, you might have to keep doing this every now and again to make sure they stay roughly equal. James?
Yeah, that was really good. I am kind of curious about like not getting any pump or soreness in the mind-muscle connection, because that definitely seems like if you're not being a total knucklehead, which if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're definitely not a knucklehead, because most of you guys who watch us are trained pretty intelligently. So my point here is, it seems odd, and that might seem like more of a neurological thing. So I'd be curious to know if you had any like previous injuries on that side of your arm, like your shoulder, maybe your neck or something like that. Definitely sounds a little bit funky. The other thing that I just want to, and I always pitch this, and I always sound like a dickhead. It's because I am a dickhead, but you might be overthinking the problem, right? If your triceps are literally not any different in size, and for the most part, not really significantly different in strength. And when I say significantly, there's always a bilateral asymmetry. Everybody's a little bit stronger on one side than the other for any given muscle group. That's normal. That's fine. We're talking as long as it's kind of within like that normal expected range, you probably don't have a huge problem. Now you might not have an injury, and you might just not get a good pump on your soreness on that one arm, and it's just a weird thing that we just can't quite figure out yet. But if you're getting a decent growth stimulus, you're getting decent performances on that same arm, don't overthink it, because you might just be able to keep carrying on with what you've been doing mostly bilateral training, and you just maybe don't get a pump on that side, but you're still making progress, right? And so then you might spend 2 blocks doing this prioritization phase when you could have just been getting more jacked on both sides instead of just the one side. So just think about it. I'm not saying that you're wrong. It did kind of raise my people's eyebrow a little bit. I'm not saying you're wrong, but just think like you might be over analyzing the asymmetry is all I'm saying.
Yeah. In the video to come that we have on the asymmetries on RP is a nice long little prelude of like, make sure it's worth it and make sure you're doing it at the right time. So. All right. Omkar Rane.
Omkar. Oh, there's some really good names on this one. Anuragvadi, Way. Wait, what? Sorry, I lost track of who are we looking for?
Omkar Rane.
All right. So it looks like I got to go back up. Where are you, Omkar?
4 upvotes.
Oh, got it. All right.
All right. So, James, I will begin to answer this, and then you, while I answer, can read it and then give your own answer after. Sound good?
Okay. This is the critique my program one?
Yes. Can you please critique my program? I've come up with an upper-lower split 4 days a week and would love to have your input on it. This is how it looks. I'm not going to read it out loud, folks. If you are listening to us podcast style, then you should look at your screen because it's a lot of shit. But feel free to pause it here if you're in here for the learning and you're interested in how we answer this question. Pause it, read it, and then see what we say. So it looks like he has an upper A and a lower A, rest upper B, and rest lower B. So for now, that split sounds really good based on the session split and muscle group focus. Looks like he has a chest focus upper and a back focused upper, which is really good. He's doing chest movements first, back movements later, and then back movements first, chest movements later, and some tricep stuff and some delts. That looks really good. So the uppers look really good. For the lower, he's using some bicep curls as well as training his legs, and that's really good because biceps can be trained often, which means when you train them sort of by moving the back, then it also knocks that out. And it looks like he's really checking a lot of boxes here. And I would say, unless I got real pedantic, and that's James's job, he probably has something, I would say this looks like a pretty good program. The only really tiny critique I would have, so that you could get something to take away from it, is you have an incline barbell press here at upper B that is 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps, but that's after tons of back work. And I would say that that's a little heavy of a load to be using. You might not have the neural drive to really get a ton out of that, to use the absolute loads you want for that when it's that late in the game. 4th exercise, maybe you just want to do some higher reps that day. So what I would actually recommend is lowering your reps when you're on chest focus for chest, and then raising your reps into maybe to the higher, slightly higher rep ranges when you're on upper B and it's back focus, and the opposite with back. So the back focus stuff, when you're doing it at first, have it heavier in the 5 to 10, 10 to 15 rep range, and then more like the 15 to 20 rep range for the stuff you do in upper A for back when it's later on. Otherwise, it looks pretty damn good. James?
Yeah, I think it looks good as well. I was kind of thinking the same thing that Dr. Mike had right there on the incline press, maybe go lighter on that. I have a couple silly ones. Okay, Mike, I think Mike, you'll relate to this, even though it's kind of silly. Bear with me. If you've never tried to do like barbell curls or any kind of really heavy barbell movement for biceps after calves, it can actually be very distracting. If your calves are actually fatigued, doing barbell curls can be unnecessarily awkward. So you might not have that problem. I have that problem. So if my calves are fatigued, I find myself just having a hard time being stable on barbell curls. Maybe consider flip-flopping those. That's an individualization issue, not like a fundamental issue. The only other thing, I think it looks great. The only other thing is if you are, and don't take this to be an insult, it's not meant to be. I just assume that everybody is intermediate unless they tell me otherwise. I would say you might be a little bit heavy on the number of exercises per muscle group in each session.
Yeah.
If you are an advanced athlete, if you're like, what we would call training age advanced, then this is fine. This is like more of an advanced style in terms of exercise selection. Intermediate, I would maybe just cut it down to 2. But the way that you did it is fine.
But then if it was advanced, we wouldn't recommend you do 6 or 7 movements per session. We would recommend 3 to 5, and then you would have to have 5 to 6 sessions a week. So if you can do this number of exercises and it's Gucci, great. If you can try to condense the exercise number, that might be a thing. Might be better.
Some people are also really good at isolating their triceps on dips. I am not. So for me, if dips are in the equation, it's going to be higher up because it's going to be a chest movement. But if you're somebody who can do dips and it's all tricep, then that's fine. You can put it at the bottom. If not, consider moving it.
For sure.
But that looks
all
great.
Right.
Yeah.
Next up, Elijah Clifford. 8 upvotes. I don't know where the fuck your thing.
Damn it.
But he's got 3 replies to it as well. So.
I know. It was going so good until just now. Fuck. All right. You know what? I'm going to stop. Screen share. Control F. Elijah.
Elijah.
Got it.
Jason Blaha.
All right.
Said people above 40 should focus on building strength instead of hypertrophy due to health and longevity. Does he have a point for people who are not professional bodybuilders? He may very well have a point, but to me that point is not immediately apparent. I actually think it's the other way around. When you're older, you need something that's better for your metabolic function, and that is building plenty of muscle tissue. The good news is, within a very wide range, building muscle tissue makes you stronger, certainly makes you strong enough if you're not competing, simultaneously expends more energy, more effort, burns more calories, makes you leaner as well. So it's better for health and really close to equally as good for function and mobility and graceful aging. And the fundamental reason why people age poorly in the respective mobility is probably muscle loss, not some kind of like, oh, they still have lots of muscle, but they're neurologically not strong enough to use it. In addition to that, hypertrophy training is less injurious than strength training, and injury and sustainability are huge factors for older folks. A lot of older powerlifters will still train for hypertrophy after they retire in the 40s, 50s, 60s. They'll do pumps, they'll do machines, they'll do some reps, but they don't go super heavy anymore, or even very heavy, because their joints and stuff like that just can't take it, and or they're just not willing to do the risk. So my view is that it's actually the opposite of this, but maybe Jason has some other good points that I haven't considered. James, what do you think?
Yeah, so I kind of am splitting the difference here, but I largely agree with you. So Jason does have some good points. And the reason why I don't know this to be true, but what I would assume is that they have shown that strength is very much associated with quantity and quality of life and reducing comorbidities from a variety of sources. So the stronger you are, bottom line, the less likely you are to die for a variety of reasons, right? Whether they're kind of internal or you get hit by a bus, whatever, right? If you're a stronger person, you're less likely to die and more likely to be independent as you get older. But that being said, you don't have to literally train strength in that sense to get those same benefits. Really, what you can do instead of training, for 1 to 5 reps, I mean, you can train 5 to 10 reps, 10 to 20 reps, and that will activate those type 2 motor units, maybe not as raw stimulus as some of the heavy lifting will, but enough to keep them from atrophying and decaying, which is what you are trying to avoid with old age. So the point being, yes, strength is very, very important as you get older, but you don't have to think of it in the literal sense of 1 to 5 rep strength. It's that's good, but that's also associated with having more muscle mass too, right? And so you can get the same effect of maintaining those alpha motor units so they don't decay and wither away from doing the same good old hypertrophy training that we've been recommending for a long time. And it's probably more sustainable and has a variety of other good benefits, like Mike already mentioned, especially the metabolic benefits. So I think that although you should keep in the back of your mind, if you notice your strength is going down, that's probably not great. But I think ultimately all signs converge to hypertrophy training being a superior choice for a variety of reasons. Not to mention just looking good naked.
Darren Hawkins.
Darren.
Oi, Darrow, you cunt.
God damn. Oi, Darrow, you fucking cunt. Darren. I'm control effing. Oh, got it. Okay.
That's a good title for an adult
Hey,
film.
oh, Darren, you fucking Darrow.
Oh,
You fucking
fuck off.
Darrow.
James, what do you think about title for an adult film? Control F.
Ooh. I like it. I like it.
All right.
Windows F.
Ooh.
Less interesting.
Yeah. James, remember you had that Windows phone and they just stopped making updates for it and they told you they stopped
I
making
love
updates
that
for
phone. They were just like, look, if you got one of these, get fucked. I was like, come on, I actually like this phone. And they're like, nah,
Sorry,
get the
we're
fuck
out
out
of
of
this
here. I was like,
industry.
oh, man.
All right.
Come on.
Darren Hawkins asks, would gym goers who build a bank of nuclei in their early years benefit when they get elderly? Would it prevent death? Only
Wait.
the singularity will prevent death, my friend. The death part's a joke, James.
Was this a joke question or is this a serious question? I can't tell.
The last part's a joke. The first one I think is serious. So, and it's not build a bank of nuclei, it's translocate nuclei from satellite cells into actual functioning muscle cells.
Okay.
And the answer to that
I couldn't tell if that's where we were going or
for sure.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, like in order to translocate nuclei, you need to train really hard for a really long time. When you're elderly, sometimes you can't do that anymore. And it has been shown pretty reliably that people who train hard when they're younger and through their lives are just more muscular when they get older than people who are elderly and pick it up when they're elderly, which a lot of times is much easier said than done. So absolutely it will help you. And the key also is the best way to do it is consistency. Start training when you're young, never quit. And after age 50, 60, you will start to get weaker. But like you might die when you're about as strong as the average 15-year-old versus as strong as the average 2-year-old. And holy shit, the average 15-year-old can get around in life no problem. You know what I mean? Yeah, they're not like a 25-year-old adult male strength, but damn close. And if you're 90 and as strong as a regular 15-year-old or something, shit, man, you're well on your way. So,
old man strength is a real thing, right? You have the benefit of being able to accrue muscle over a very long period of time throughout your life. And by the time you're actually starting to see muscle loss, you might be a pretty gnarly old man.
yeah, and that's really the goal here is to become a gnarly old man. James, this next question asker is the easiest name ever. Thanos.
Oh, how did he get that name?
That's good. I mean, damn.
He
must have run onto
actually
YouTube
is
immediately.
Thanos.
And his profile picture's got that weird chin.
God, dude. Ron Perlman was Thanos, right? Or was it somebody else? No, it wasn't Ron Perlman. Fuck. No, it was the guy who was in Deadpool. Fuck. He was also in the Goonies. Fuck.
Yeah.
Sean Astin? Is that his?
No.
Oh. Ah. I'm going to get
Googling
roasted
it.
for this one. Shit.
Josh Brolin.
Brolin.
He even has bro in his name.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Folks, if you haven't watched The Goonies, I watched it on a flight not too long ago. You're going to see a lot of actors that you know, and they're fucking children. It's such a trip. Go back and watch it. It's a trip.
All right. Thanos is an interesting question. He said, after conquering worlds, I've been a competitive powerlifter for the past 4 years that got very obese to hit all my goals. I successfully got the total I wanted. Now I'm 40 pounds down and intend on losing another 10 to 15. Recently, I've gotten into wanting to learn and excel at the Olympic lifts and doing athletic work like speed, agility, and quickness drills. My question is, when I get back to a mass phase, can I do all 5 lifts to not only regain my lost strength in the big 3, but also learn to make progress on the Olympic lifts and also simultaneously have a successful hypertrophy phase? Or would I be better off using the big 3?
No.
James
Abort.
says no. Abort. Press the button. Or would it be better to use the big 3 in other rep ranges along with lots of accessories and some Olympic weightlifting so I can build as much muscle as possible while also doing all 5 lifts? So a hypertrophy weightlifting cycle, but using the big 3 for hypertrophy to keep adaptation. My main goal is to gain as much muscle as possible while also performing and improving on these lifts. James, this is all you, my friend.
Yes. So you're running into the problem of trying to do too many things at once. You have to kind of funnel your goals into something that you can put a lot of energy into and get a lot of payout in return. Unfortunately,
100%.
if you're trying to do like hypertrophy, strength, Olympic lifting, power, speed, quickness, agility, you're going to be making very minimal, if none at all, progress in many areas. And so you can do that if it tickles your fancy and if it makes you feel good, that's fine. So I won't argue against that. But if the question is like, am I going to have a successful hypertrophy phase? Am I going to have a successful training block?
Right.
The answer is largely no. And that's just from objective criteria of like performance improvements and things like that. So I think the latter one you gave was probably much better. Like you can use the big three or their variants, which is probably a better idea in those hypertrophy ranges. And then you could also just incorporate some basic technique stuff on the Olympic lifts using mostly submaximal loads, building up your technique, building up your positional awareness and the various derivatives. And then eventually, after you do your hypertrophy phase, you can switch over to a maintenance phase, and then you can start training more strength and then start increasing the intensity of your Olympic lifting. Again, like if you were to press Mike and I really hard and say, like, should I include elements of hypertrophy, powerlifting, and Olympic lifting in the same program that's oriented towards hypertrophy? I mean, if it's a yes or no answer, it's a hard no. But if you don't mind making some compromise because those other things make you happy, you can include elements of those things, make some nominal progress, mostly in the area of technique, which can phase potentiate into gains down the long term. That's kind of the issue. I'm not trying to be an asshole. Just take the speed, agility, quickness drills out of there. I mean, like, it's one of those things I think as we get older, we want to feel like we're still athletic. Like, unless you're planning on stepping on a rugby pitch or a soccer pitch or lacrosse, whatever, don't do it. It's a waste of time. I'm guilty of it too. I'm just as guilty, and that's why I'm telling you, it's a waste of time. Take it from a guy who's living that old boy's rugby life, right? Do it for fun. That's fine, but don't train it.
Yeah, 100%. And especially when you're getting back and your goal is to, like, you know, get back to your prime-ish strength, you got to take that seriously. You have to take the phasic approach. Just assuming that you're essentially saying, yeah, I'm going to, like, just get into all this and just become amazing at all of it at the same time. Like, gee whiz, you know, I wish it worked like that. Probably just not the case.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it, James. Yeah. That's all of our questions for this time.
Oh, man. I feel like that one flew by, folks. Man, that was fun. That was a good one. I like our format now. I like the YouTube format.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
Tiago was busting my chops like, I need the Zoom live idea. I was like, we haven't gone Zoom live for like over a year or something like that. I don't remember, but it was funny. He was like, oh, shit. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, I guess that's it. Mike, is there anything fun coming up on RP or RP YouTube or anything?
No, well, tons on RP YouTube all the time. We got all kinds of stuff coming, so just stay tuned and subscribe. But the real thing is, folks, if you ask your questions and you want them answered, write them in every webinar and write them in early so more people see them and can upvote them if they like them. And honestly, like, look, because you might not get your question answered, to make it better for everyone, including yourself, if you just, after you submit your question, you know, at least like upvote at least a couple questions that you really stick out to you, and maybe like split the shit in half, upvote half and don't upvote the ones, like go maybe like if there's 10 questions when you posted, browse each one and be like, okay, upvote that's good, no, that's not good, upvote that's good, now that's not good, and then in the end we're going to get lots of votes and be really sure that we're answering the questions that like a lot more people want to see, because that's how we're doing it here. So give that some thought.
Awesome. I don't really have much. It's just from some developmental stuff. So I'm actually going to be submitting finally a draft 0 of our another rendition of our Volume Landmarks book, and this one's going to be more geared towards developing fitness skills and tactics in sport and the proper kind of scientific approach to sport training, what we like to call like evidence-based practice. So hopefully I'll be submitting a draft 0 to our RP group, and hopefully they'll give me some good feedback. It's going to be myself. Chad Wesley Smith is contributor. Jake Reed, who's really great, is also a contributor. And, of course, Mike's going to look over everything and make sure I didn't fuck anything up too bad. And, of course, you know, I've written quite a bit of it. And so that's kind of hopefully going to be on the horizon. I don't want to give any dates because I don't want to get anything wrong, but that's in the works. And hopefully everyone will enjoy. That's all I got.
Awesome. Awesome, folks. Thank you
All
for
right.
tuning in.
Folks, thank you so much. Thanks for engaging with us. We will see you next time.